I really need to tell you about Big Fork Brands because they make bacon sausage, which is about the most American thing I've ever heard. It's not sausage with bacon in it. It's bacon literally woven into premium pork sausage. 5 flavors, including maple and brown sugar, which is delicious. They also make these Chicago-style sauces that have all 7 toppings of a Chicago hot dog in one bottle, because apparently Chicagoans are tired of trying to open 7 different jars. And by the way, one reviewer called the bacon sausage life-changing, which feels dramatic, but it's probably accurate. Try it yourself and let me know. I've got you 20% off the best deal they offer, code 10MM at bigforkbrands.com. bigforkbrands.com. And it's very important to use the code so that you get the discount. In September 1972, a dog came home carrying a human arm. What police found next launched 50 years of ghost stories, conspiracy theories, and absolutely zero answers. But in 2024, everything changed. This is the real story of what happened to Jeannette DePalma. So here's what actually went down in Springfield, New Jersey in 1972. And I promise you it's wilder than any horror movie because this is real, and it involves some of the worst police work you've ever heard. August 7th, 1972, Jeannette DePalma was 16 years old, about to turn 17 in a few days. She told her mom she was taking the train to visit a friend. Totally normal teenage plan. She walked out of the door of her family's home in Springfield, New Jersey, and that was it. Nobody saw her alive again. Now, Jeannette was complicated in a way that most teenagers are complicated. She loved rock music, went to parties, hung out with friends. But she'd also gotten really involved in this thing called the Jesus movement, which was basically the Christian version of hippie counterculture. She'd been through some stuff with drugs and was actively counseling other kids about staying clean. She was also known for hitchhiking, which was super common back then, but obviously dangerous. Her family was traditional Italian Catholic, big family, moved to Springfield in 1966. By all accounts, she was a sweet kid, quiet, funny, and kind. You know, a real person, not a character in someone's moral panic fantasy. 6 weeks went by, 6 entire weeks. Then on September 19th, 1972, a neighborhood dog comes trotting home with a severely decomposed human arm in its mouth. Could you even imagine if your dog strolled up carrying a person's arm? The police followed the trail to this elevated cliff area in the Springfield Quarry. The locals called it the Devil's Teeth because, of course, they did. Everything creepy gets a creepy name. And there, they found Jeannette's remains. And here's where the case goes from tragic to absolutely infuriating. The body was badly decomposed, which already makes forensic work really difficult. But the way the scene was described, that's where things get messy. The most reliable accounts say that her remains were inside this perimeter of fallen branches and logs arranged in a coffin shape, with some small makeshift wooden crosses nearby. If that's true, it could mean someone tried to give her a crude burial. Maybe the killer felt guilty. Maybe someone stumbled on her and tried to do something respectful. We don't actually know, but that's not the story that spread. No, within days, rumors were flying that she'd been found on a pentagram surrounded by mutilated animals. Full occult ritual scene. And even though law enforcement denied this, the story was already out there, growing legs and running through this affluent suburban community like wildfire. Enter Pastor James Tate from the DePalma family's Assembly of God Church. This man stood up publicly and declared that devil's disciples killed Jeannette, possibly because she tried to preach to them. A religious authority figure saying this in 1972 suburban New Jersey, that's basically throwing gasoline on a fire. The newspapers went absolutely feral. Headlines like "Witchcraft Seen Possible in Teenage Girl's Death" and "Was Girl Black Magic Victim" started appearing everywhere. People started talking about a satanic cult called the Witches, supposedly operating in the nearby reservation. And here's the thing that makes me genuinely angry. This narrative actively derailed the investigation. Resources that should have been used to track down a human predator, someone who killed a teenage girl, were instead chasing rumors about devil worshippers in the woods. The early on police work in this case was a disaster. They focused hard on this man named Red Kira, a 46-year-old caddy who lived in a makeshift camp near where the body was found. Red had left the area sometime in August, which looked suspicious. They issued a bulletin in January 1973 asking to question him. They found him, interviewed him, and the Union County Prosecutor's Office cleared him completely. Meanwhile, Jeannette's parents were giving investigators what former officers described as short and vague answers. There was talk around the station that the family wanted to keep this quiet, whether that was shame about her hitchhiking, mistrust of police, or just wanting privacy during an unimaginable time. It created friction that slowed everything down. Medical examiner Dr. Bernard Enrenberg had a tough job because of how decomposed the remains were. The official cause of death? Unknown. He couldn't rule out strangulation and said that it was a possibility. There were no bullet wounds, no stab wounds, no broken bones. No evidence of drugs or overdose either, which shut down theories that friends had hidden her body after an accidental death. The lack of external trauma points toward strangulation, which is exactly the kind of method serial killers prefer because it doesn't leave much evidence. But here's something weird. They found a high amount of lead in her remains. Nobody could explain it then, and nobody can explain it now. It's just this bizarre forensic detail hanging out there with no context. Fast forward to the late 1990s. Weird New Jersey magazine starts investigating this case and discovers that the original Springfield police files are missing. Gone. The Springfield PD claimed they were destroyed by flooding from Hurricane Floyd in 1999. The Union County Prosecutor's Office, though, confirmed they had copies. So was this an attempted cover-up? Probably not. More likely it was catastrophically bad record-keeping and local government incompetence. But here's what really seals the failure. A retired officer revealed in a documentary that Jeannette's purse, a crucial piece of evidence that could have contained notes, personal effects, or trace evidence, was never officially entered into evidence. They just didn't follow basic procedure on one of the most important items in the case. September 2024, after decades of work, Weird New Jersey finally obtained and reviewed the original crime scene photographs from the Union County Prosecutor's Office. The photos that police claimed were missing. Their conclusion was definitive. There was zero occult activity involved in her death. No stick crosses in the photos, no stone circles, no animal remains, nothing. 50 years of a narrative built on absolute fiction. The urban legend literally took over the investigation and probably let the murderer get away with it. With all the occult nonsense finally debunked, investigators can focus on what this case actually is. A likely serial killer victim. Richard Cottingham, known as the Torso Killer, is one of New Jersey's most notorious serial killers. He was actively killing in New Jersey and New York in 1972, the exact time Jeannette disappeared. His method? Strangulation. In court, he confessed to killing 5 women in Nassau County, New York, between 1968 and 1973. 2 of those victims, Mary Beth Hines and Laverne Moy, were strangled and dumped in 1972, the same year as Jeannette. Spring 2021, Richard Cottingham, sitting in prison, reaches out to journalist Jesse P. Pollock, who wrote a book about Jeannette's case. And Cottingham says something crucial. He alludes to abducting Jeannette while she was hitchhiking. This detail matters so much because Jeannette's hitchhiking habit wasn't front-page news. Not everyone knew about that. The public narrative was consumed by fake satanic cult stories. The fact that Cottingham knew this specific personal detail about how she liked to travel adds serious weight to his claim. If he's telling the truth, it confirms Jeannette was a random victim of opportunity, not someone targeted for a ritual. Pollock forwarded all this information to the Union County Prosecutor's Office in 2021. As of now, no official updates have been released about whether they're pursuing this lead. Jeannette DePalma's murder represents everything that can go wrong when fear and sensationalism replace actual investigative work. For 5 decades, this case was defined by stories that turned out to be completely false. A teenage girl who was likely killed by a serial predator, became the center of a moral panic that helped the killer escape justice. The 2024 confirmation that there was no occult staging at the scene is the most important development in this case's history. It's not a story about satanic cults. It's a story about a young woman who was probably murdered by Richard Cottingham or someone like him, and then failed by nearly every system that was supposed to help her. Justice for Jeannette depends on them finally doing what they should have done in 1972, treating this like what it is, a murder, not a legend, not a ghost story, a crime committed by a human being who should be held accountable. Jeannette DePalma deserves better than to be remembered at the center of a satanic panic. She deserves to be remembered as herself, a 16-year-old girl who loved music, who was trying to help her friends, who walked out her door one August morning and never came home. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. My name is Joe, and I'm your host, whether you like it or not. If you're a new listener, make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening right now. Go to 10minutemurder.com. You can check out everything the podcast does, get links to all the places you need to have links. There's a blog there and a way to get in touch with me if you so desire. And here is one of those emails. Subject: accidental true crime education. Hi, Joe. I started listening to your show for entertainment. Now I catch myself explaining the difference between various forensic methods to my friends, like I'm qualified to testify in court. Has anyone ever told you that you've basically turned them into an amateur detective? Elliot in Reno. Elliot, thank you for the email, and no one's ever said that to me before, but I feel that same way. Before I started doing this podcast, I feel like maybe because I was really into true crime, I had more knowledge about forensic science and the things that go on in a crime scene. No more, not even to the level of like your average police officer. So less than that, but like more than the average person. I had about that amount of knowledge. But I've read so much in the time that I've started this podcast, so many court cases, research, investigative techniques, you name it, I've probably read it or seen it. And again, I'm no forensic expert, but the knowledge that I've gained reading all of that and seeing all of that helps me to do the research for this podcast. I feel like, and I hope you agree, that from the beginning of it, if you're an OG listener and you've listened to the beginning to now, my descriptions of forensic evidence and the ins and outs of that have gotten much better. Because as I understand it more, I can explain it better. And I suppose, Elliot, if I'm explaining it better, that helps you to understand it better and turns you into an amateur detective. So that's a compliment without you realizing it is. Thank you for the email. And again, if you want to send me an email, you can go to my website, 10minutemurder.com. And that's going to do it. That is your episode for today. Keep on binging if that's what you're doing. If you're in the middle of a 10-minute murder, 10-minute mystery binge, don't let me stop you. Keep right on going. But if this is where you get off, I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. See you next time. Look, I'm not saying society is collapsing, but have you been outside? Prep Starts Now has emergency supplies for people who want to be prepared without turning into those guys with underground bunkers. But if you happen to be a guy with an underground bunker, give me a call. Prep Starts Now has 72-hour emergency kits, first aid supplies, car breakdown gear, water filtration, basically everything you need when the power goes out and you realize you can't charge your phone to Google, what do I do? They also have a prep academy that teaches you what to actually do in emergencies, which is honestly more useful than owning a bunch of gear that you don't know how to use. I've got you 15% off with code 10MM at prepstartsnow.com. That is the highest discount available, and it's very important to use the code so that you get that discount. prepstartsnow.com, code 10MM, because the best time to prepare was yesterday, and the second best time is right before you need it.